It's a bit past the midpoint of the year, but I still want to reflect on how the first half of the year went and talk about my goals for the rest of the year. Did you set any writing goals at the beginning of the year? What were they? Are you on track? So I'm not where I thought I would be by this point in the year, but I'm okay with that because my goals have changed quite a lot. My initial goal for the year was to work on Project Hunger, my sapphic gothic vampire novel, and have multiple drafts for it written by this point. While I do plan on going back to Project Hunger because I absolutely love that story and it means a lot to me, I don't think I'm ready to write it right now because of some of the themes that I plan on tackling in that story. Another goal I had was to work on some short stories and submit them to literary magazines, but as I started doing that, I realized I wasn't a huge fan of writing short stories. However, after watching some videos from Sierra, I definitely want to give them another go. However, my initial issues with short stories were I felt like they were just a bit too short for me to try to tell the stories I wanted to tell, but I think that's more of a skill issue. However, I discovered I really like flash fiction. I've actually written a few this year, and if you're interested in reading them, you can check out my Substack linked down below. However, I did learn that I prefer novellas because they're definitely shorter than a novel, but they're not as short as a short story, and that was kind of the sweet spot for me. However, like I said, I really want to try giving short stories another go later on. What are you currently working on, and how much writing have you done so far this year? Right now, I'm working on Project Lily, a gothic horror novella about a witch who does questionable things for love. Earlier on this year, pretty soon after I realized I was not working on Project Hunger anymore, I decided I wanted to write a series of 3 novellas. One, again, is Project Lily, and I'm currently working on that. And I've also outlined and brainstormed a second novella for this series that I already made a video on. I haven't written anything for it yet, but I plan on getting back to it next year. Also, in terms of other writing, like I mentioned, I've already written some flash fiction and I've shared that on my Substack. In terms of Project Lily, I've written one full first draft, which was about 25,000 words. And now I'm working on draft 2 of Project Lily, which will be hopefully around 30,000 words. But this is a complete rewrite from draft 1, so it would be a completely new set of words. What does your writing routine look like right now? Has it changed since the beginning of the year? Are you happy with it? If not, how would you want it to look? My writing routine is always changing depending on what I have going on in life. Sometimes I decide to write based on time, but currently I am writing based on word count as I have a dev editor booked and I told her that I had about 30,000 words I wanted to give her. So I'm very focused on that number, even though it's okay if my number is a little bit higher or lower than that. So what I've been doing lately is writing in 200 word chunks because I realized the amount of time it takes me to write about 200 words is really the only amount of time I have to focus before I feel like I need to get up and do something else for a bit of time. So I write 200 words, take a very short break, and then write another 200 words, and then I just do that on and off for the whole day until I hit my word count goal of either 1,000 or 2,000, depending on where I'm at in my writing progress. Usually I wouldn't do this, I would focus more on a time-based goal where I want to write for at least maybe 30 minutes a day or even up to 3 hours. But like I said, I have a word count goal I'm trying to hit by a certain date. So 3 hours, I could write 1 word, or that could be 1,000 words. It doesn't really help me hit my goal, but focusing on word count instead of time right now is what's just better for me. Have you encountered any good resources about writing? I absolutely love the One Stop for Writers website. They have a lot of information on writing trauma, having characters with different backgrounds that will affect how they act in the current moment of the story, writing about emotions, writing about different tropes. I'll link that website down below. I do have a few books that I've purchased from them, but you absolutely don't have to in order to get some really good value out of their website. Toughest moment related to your writing so far this year? Honestly, the toughest moment for my writing this year has just been deciding to not work on Project Hunger because that was a really big project I planned on writing. It was going to be my potentially debut novel, which I realize it is not going to be because even after I finish my 3 novellas, I plan on working on a completely different novel before getting back to Project Hunger. However, like I said before, I'm pretty glad that I decided to not work on it because I don't feel like I'm able to tell the story I want to tell with my current skill set, and it's really important to me, so I would rather work on other projects and build up my writing craft. Also, I just feel like Why would I keep on working on something I'm not feeling confident in and then potentially burn out when I could just pivot to a different story and keep my momentum going? Best memory related to your writing so far this year. So this past year, I've met some amazing writers and just people on Discord and through AuthorTube. And so they have been absolutely fundamental in keeping me accountable and making writing something that's really fun, even when sometimes I feel like I just want to give up. So I'm really thankful to the people that I've met on Discord and YouTube these past few months that have absolutely changed how I view myself as a writer and even as a person. So shout out to all of you. You know who you are, and I appreciate you guys so much. And I don't think I would have gotten this far in any of my projects if it wasn't for you guys. Something important that you've learned or advice for your future self. Well, this isn't something that I've learned recently, but it's something I always have to remind myself of, and that is, it's okay if things need to change, and it's okay if things are not going the way you planned. I've made a lot of changes to my writing routine. I've dropped and restarted projects, and all of that can be really stressful. However, I'm glad I listened to myself when I realized I was just stuck. And like I said before, I would rather not burn out and just pivot instead of forcing myself to continue on a path that's going to lead to me not writing for a very long time. What would you like to accomplish with your writing during the second half of the year? Okay, so you all know by now I am working with a dev editor, and I plan to give her my Project Lily Gothic novella the end of this month, or September 1st, I should say. And then during September, I'm going to work on brainstorming for my new novel, which is a romance. So if you guessed I was working on a romance in my last video when I asked you guys to guess, then you were correct. So I plan on brainstorming for that in September. Then in October and November, I want to work on draft 3 of my Gothic story that I sent to my dev editor. And hopefully those 2 months will be all that I need to have some pretty good edits done, because then in December, I really want to start writing for my romance novel, since I also have a dev editor booked for that in April. So that is my goal for the rest of the year. Draft 3 for Project Lily, and then starting draft 1 for my romance novel that I still really need to think about, so I cannot wait for September to get here. So now I get to tag some other writers to do this challenge, and I am going to tag Saoirse and Tia. And if you don't want to make a video, that is okay. Maybe just make a little community post reflecting on these things and talking about what your goals are for the next year. As always, thank you so much for watching, and in a future video, I will be talking in more depth about my current project, Project Lily, and the differences between draft 1, draft 2, and draft 3.